Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I am Bajo.
I'm Hex. Are you ready for this week, Bajo?
I am ready. Do I need to be more ready than usual?
Well, yes, you do, because each game is more exciting than the last, starting with maximum action with Crysis III. And that's not all. Persona 4 Golden is resurrected for the Vita. And you love Dear Esther.
I didn't.
Get ready for Proteus.
You're rather excitable this week, Hex.
I had a bowl of pure sugar for breakfast this morning, Bajo.
Plus, Goose takes us back to school for a class on reboots. But before all that, can you guess the game for this week? She's off.
Developer Harmonix has announced that they will cease producing weekly downloadable content for the Rock Band games on the 2nd of April. Harmonix has produced the weekly song packs in what has been the longest running DLC schedule in gaming. The DLC was released consecutively for the past 275 weeks, totaling well over 4,000 extra songs. The studio stated that they are now focusing their resources on several upcoming projects. Sony has revealed the first official details of the PlayStation 4, as well as several new games. The console will be powered by 8 CPU cores and 8 GB of GDDR5 RAM, providing almost 2 teraflops of computational power. It'll feature the ability to record and upload video with a dedicated share button on the controller, which also has a touchpad. Surprisingly, Sony didn't reveal the actual console or price and only announced a vague holiday 2013 release date. The troubled Supreme Commander developer Gas Powered Games has been acquired by Wargaming.net, the developer of free-to-play games such as World of Tanks. Gas Powered Games was recently hit with major redundancies shortly before they cancelled their crowdsourced project Wildman after it failed to gather enough interest and raised less than half of its $1.1 million goal. Publishers Electronic Arts and Zynga have reached an out-of-court settlement over last year's suit which alleged that Zynga's The Ville was an unmistakable copy of The Sims Social. The companies released a joint statement saying that they have resolved their claims, however the terms of the settlement were undisclosed. Proteus is our most recent whimsical adventure of, well, being in a world and not really doing anything. When we've tackled this concept before, we've kind of sketchily settled on a game being a virtual experience that gives you something to do or interact with.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily need to have an objective. You just need to be able to do something. Like Minecraft, for example, that doesn't really have an objective, and look how big that game is. It's definitely a game. Also, having fun is in there for me. This is a really hard genre to define, because if you're just moving around a beautiful world with some lovely music, is it really a game? Where is the game in that?
And yet there is still something oddly compelling about these experiences that gets us talking about them, though, isn't there? In Proteus, you begin floating in a pixelated ocean looking out towards an island in the distance.
Upon making your way to this island, you discover strange monolithic structures that seem to have the power to teleport you to different places around the island. Or perhaps even a different time. I wasn't really sure, as seasons and other aspects of this island can change quite spontaneously. The power of the monoliths is only discovered if you go right up to them, however. It's something that could be easily missed. This is the kind of game that wants to encourage you to uncover the secrets that lay within this island.
I spent my first little while running between these towers and exploring different aspects of the island before I sort of thought, well, I guess that's it, and was about to log out. But Proteus has a cheeky way of catching your eye with a tiny pixelated bunny or perhaps some little shape off in the distance that makes you think, wait, was that there before? And suddenly, like an excited, curious child, you find yourself chasing after it.
At one point, I tried to swim away from the island to see how far I would get, but then I just started getting very bored and a bit worried that I wouldn't find the island again. So I went back and logged out after a bit. And when I logged back in, I noticed it was a different island. So that's interesting. It means each experience is going to be different. There's a beautiful score of strange chimes and hollow wooden sounds like rain on bamboo. And this music dynamically reacts with the environmental changes you cause within the space. It's features like this that push it more into the realm of digital art than a game.
You know, I was reading the dev's blog and he expressed some frustration over people suggesting that this isn't a game. I mean, he argued that words like games are fluid and should be stretched. A comic book isn't necessarily always comical, was an argument he made. And if this isn't a game, then should it be excluded from stores that sell games?
I understand that this is trying to be a different experience, and it is beautiful and interesting to wander around in, but definitions aside of whether it's a game or not, my experience with this game wasn't fun. I didn't have a good time here, and for $10, I felt like I didn't get that value out of this experience. So I kind of hated it, actually. I'm giving it 3 out of 10.
Oh, it's still so hard to score these games, I think. But for me, Journey still holds a trophy for perfectly integrating the right amount of gameplay into an original and artistic digital experience. So experiences like this still leave me a little bit disappointed. I'm giving it 4.5.
I always loved making games. I used to make them on my Atari 400 and went to college and studied computer science. But I got more and more into creative writing, and I had this 2 interests of creative writing and programming. And then I just happened to luck into a job offer that I saw in the Career Center at my college. It said, we want programmers who can write dialogue. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And it was at Lucasfilm Games. It was what they were called back then, and they had made some of my favorite games on the Atari 400. They had made Ball Blazer and Rescue and Fractalus and all these old games that I just loved. So I was really excited about going to work there. So I got really lucky, I guess.
Thank you. You've been very helpful. Goodbye.
Yeah, sure.
Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4 was a JRPG for the PlayStation 2 released at the end of its cycle about 4 or 5 years ago. Now, Japanese developer Atlus have enhanced the game for the Vita handheld, and the result is golden. Persona 4 golden. You know what, Bajo? Since this game is on a handheld, we could do this review anywhere.
If we could play on the go.
Yeah, I mean, the world is our oyster.
Yeah, even though
really.
we've already played it, we could still go do somewhere else and talk about it.
Let's do it.
What about here?
No.
No.
This is dumb. Or we could just do it here in the office.
Yeah.
In Persona 4 Golden, you play a lanky male student sent from the city to visit his uncle Dojima and niece Nanako in the small rural town of Inaba. You enroll in the local high school, make some new friends, and before you know it, become embroiled in a supernatural murder mystery.
The game progresses from day to day as you go about a relatively mundane routine, attending school and hanging about after class. You can only perform a set number of activities each day, so it's up to you how you spend that precious time, solving quests and getting to know the people of Inaba better.
Yes, in fact, leveling up your personal relationships, which are called social links, is one of the most important things you can do. That's because each character is linked to an arcana, like tarot cards, and maxing these out is the secret to unlocking more powerful personas, the godlike beings you summon from your cards in battle.
With a ragtag bunch of students as the main characters in this Hex, I knew it would have a different flavour to your average JRPG, but still I just felt like the first half hour was dismissing text boxes and just so much dialogue.
Hey. You dropped this.
Please let me skip it. Don't just fast forward. If you want to skip something, don't just make me watch it faster.
Sorry. I went on and on without realizing.
It does take a while to get going, but this is a very story-driven RPG. And it's full of that anime-style humour as well, which I really like. Not a day passes without something wacky happening. What did you think of the whole sort of Scooby-Doo setup with this gang of characters?
Yeah, they're a good mix and all quite likeable, from the goofy Yosuke
Critical hit to the net!
to the spirited Chie. Although Teddy, who was obviously the comic relief, was annoying, maybe it was just the choice of voice actor.
Oh, don't you worry. All the ladies will get Teddy's love.
But they all do make for a likeable party. Now let's get to the combat. All of the battles take place in an alternate dimension. You and your friends discover that victims are being kidnapped and thrown through a magic portal television set where they're being faced by their shadows. This is the dark side of their personalities. These shadows take the form of big boss fights, confrontations you need to win to rescue those characters and return them back to normal life.
Yosuke, are you okay?
Yeah. What
happened?
Each visit to the... Oh, thank you. Is this soy? Each visit to the magical television world is in effect a dungeon crawl, but by the time you get to the third one, it all starts to feel a bit samey.
Yeah, it is kind of the same stretch of corridors and boxy rooms, but at least they're themed differently. For example, one is a grand castle and the other is a men's-only sauna.
These images are coming to you live from inside this steamy paradise.
Anyway, these areas aren't really designed to be explored so much as provide a place for you to systematically tackle monsters and grind some XP.
Did I level up?
So you can eventually take on that big boss fight at the deepest level of the dungeon.
The combat is challenging and strategic, and I quite enjoyed it, Hex, and this is where the personas come in.
Soda!
The turn-based combat mostly revolves around using your persona's elemental-based magic, so you'll be dealing in the usual fire, ice, electricity, wind, and so on. But there's a huge range of spells and buffs that target single or multiple enemies, and you need to learn enemy resistances and the perfect knockdown so you can pile on and do some serious damage. It took me quite a while to get the hang of it, but it was rewarding.
Should we show him who's boss? All right!
The variety of different personas is great, from graceful healers through to tough-looking damage dealers. I like that you can shuffle between a whole stack of them on your turn and switch them out. That opens up combat for a lot of different tactics because they all have such different spells and abilities.
Fight! Fight! Fight!
Unlocking different personas is quite challenging too. You need to combine the cards with the ones you already own and have already leveled up to merge them into potentially superior beings, sometimes sacrificing 5 just for one.
And creating personas links back to all that relationship building you do back in the real world of Inaba. Because new personas stand to get a huge XP boost upon creation based on how strong your social link is with certain characters. So there's good motivation to work on those relationships.
I could have done without all the sentimental philosophizing that comes with solving all those relationship issues though.
Well...
After such great combat and those tough, involving boss fights, you get dumped back into the slow pace of trudging around for days on end, listening to schoolyard gossip, and it just more things to delay me to get to that combat, so I didn't really enjoy all of that.
Oh, it's not that bad. Plus, there's plenty of things to do on your days off from combat, you know, around town and stuff. You can go fishing or take non-combat side quests from a friendly fox at the local shrine, go shopping for gear, and even find local stray cats to boost your understanding. Ah, cats.
I rode around on my bike a lot.
It's pretty!
Ah, taking in the sights. But what are your final thoughts?
Well, I really wanted to like this because I have found a new love for JRPGs of late, but it is just too slow paced for me. It takes too long to get to the fun, so I can still recognize that it's a solid quality JRPG, so I'm going to give it 7.5.
I actually think this is one of the best games you can play on the Vita at the moment, especially if JRPGs are your thing. The Persona system works great, it's a really fun whodunit, and if you're tired of the same old fantasy fare, then why not give this schoolyard romp a try? I'm giving it 8.5.
So how would you classify this game, Hex? A requel, a reboot, a prequel, pre-boot?
Well, lucky for you, Goose is holding a short course on how to reboot a franchise.
Oh, thanks. Finally.
Okay, class. Today we are looking at reboots. Currently, both the Devil May Cry and the Tomb Raider franchises are in the midst of reboots, so it's a safe bet to say developers will be making more of them. Hey! Darren's dictionary defines a gaming reboot as a new chapter that disregards all previous continuity and restarts a franchise from scratch. It's also important to distinguish reboots from remakes. Instead of disregarding the original entirely, remakes specifically enhance old games scene by scene with better visuals. The GameCube version of Resident Evil is a perfect example of a remake.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
Hey, Wesker, where's Chris?
Jill, no.
Okay, now that's out of the way, let's break it down into a checklist of what things a good reboot needs to tick off. Lights, please. Number 1. Title. Use the original game's title. It sounds obvious, but it's often overlooked. Reusing the first game's name is a clear way for developers to establish this isn't just another sequel. Number 2, time. There needs to have been a lengthy gap between games. Giving audiences a few years away from the franchise allows us to build up some nostalgia for a reboot. Number 3. Content. Change up the characters and the setting. This is another biggie. If it's not reinventing the heroes, then the game's more of a sequel than a reboot.
Nature calls? It's in the back.
What is that, an egg timer?
It's a vial containing a spell I made from a variety of...
I don't need to know.
Number 4. Gameplay, specifically innovative gameplay. This is really the make or break factor. If it's not going to shake things up and deliver something we haven't seen before, then it can't call itself a reboot. Okay, now we have our checklist covered, it's time to test it with a couple of previous reboots. First up, Turok. The original Turok Dinosaur Hunter appeared on the Nintendo 64 in 1997, and it was one of the first games to establish first-person shooters weren't merely the domain of PC. The franchise was rebooted in 2008 with the simply titled Turok. The original iconic Native American hunter was replaced by a hardened space marine who crash-landed on an alien world conveniently populated with alien dinosaurs. Alas, the gameplay was its Achilles heel. While it wasn't terrible, the game's brainless AI and a forgettable arsenal doomed this shooter's appeal. Next up, Donkey Kong. The original arcade game cast the girlfriend-grabbing gorilla as the villain in a multi-screen platformer that lifted the genre to new heights. Released in 1994, Donkey Kong Country's name strays a little from the reboot formula, but it did set up the move to a whole new land, so we'll let it slide. Donkey Kong Country marked the start of the legendary partnership between Nintendo and English studio Rare. The Brits revolutionized Donkey Kong, adding a string of new characters and now iconic features like barrel blasting, banana collecting, and beast riding. The game arrived in the mid-90s when the whole industry was swept up in a frenzy of new 3D games. But its cutting-edge pre-rendered 2D graphics and deep platforming played a big part in keeping 2D games relevant. Without Donkey Kong's successful reboot, we may not have seen the string of later 2D versions of Nintendo's mascots. Okay, finally we have Prince of Persia. The 1989 original climbed above his platforming peers with a more sophisticated style of action. 2003's Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time had a clunky title, but it had been 4 years since the horrendous Prince of Persia 3D, which was just enough time to dim the bad memories. The original Luke Skywalker-inspired lead was abandoned in favour of a fresh, grittier prince, and the Persian backdrop was swapped for an Indian one. However, this reboot's trump card was its gameplay concepts. The graceful choreographed movement inspired a string of parkour titles, including Assassin's Creed. And its rewinding time gimmick was copied in everything from races to puzzlers.
What have I done?
This reboot revived a franchise that was thought to be dead, and is often cited as one of the best games of last generation. It led to a string of sequels, and even a second successful Prince of Persia reboot, with 2008's anime-inspired makeover.
Father?
Father, no!
Lights, please. So, there you have it. You're now all up to speed on reboots. As the costs of big studio games rise, publishers are increasingly looking at safe bets. And reboots are attractive options because the games can shake up the formula and innovate without as much risk of failure as a brand new franchise IP. Soon, we'll see how the Tomb Raider reboot fares. It's been 5 years since the last game, and it stars a younger, less experienced Lara, facing higher octane action. Okay guys, to recap, expect to see more reboots out there, but please guys, keep in mind your checklist at all times to help watch out for some of the duds that can be out there as well. Homework on my desk tomorrow, guys. Cheers.
Good game. 23 years ago, the alien Seth invaded our world. We stopped them. Victory costs. Every time you pay a little more. They call me Prophet. I saw a glimpse of what's coming. And there was nothing left of me to stop it.
Crysis III takes us to a ruined New York. Set after the events of the last game, the organization known as Cell are continuing to toy with the alien technology that brought the predatory beasties to the planet in the first place. Captain Price impersonator and walking testicle Psycho bring Prophet in to find out what the Cell guys are up to.
Whoa, 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 easy, friendlies!
Psycho was in the first game and its expansion, and now he's back to be your main buddy here as part of some anti-Cell resistance unit. And I'm glad, because there's some really nice moments between him and Prophet. Psycho has been cut out of his fancy suit, and you can see it's affected his mental state as he has withdrawals from its power.
They took my nanosuit, Prophet! I'm human! Human? You know how much I've sacrificed to stop the Ceph. How do I get that back?
Even with quite a solid performance, I found it hard to get invested in a soldier who's just complaining about not having a suit.
Yeah, it does get a bit tired, that subject matter, after a while, and even though he says it's not really about the suit, I think it kind of is. I can't work out what else it would be about. It is more interesting than Prophet's storyline, though, which is all that more machine than man stuff, which is feeling a little bit tired with Crysis.
You might as well be a fucking machine because you sure as hell ain't no human being anymore. I mean, you never were much good at it to begin with, but Jesus Christ, look at you now!
Plus, all the dialogue feels like it's narrated to you rather than involving you in what's going on, so...
But story isn't why we play Crysis, it's about planning out and executing an attack as an overpowered half-man, half-machine juggernaut. And this game embraces the planning stage we love so much from the original Crysis, with more big outdoor areas and tricks up your sleeve. Using your visor, you'll scan the battlefield and mark enemies on your map, and also hack mines and turrets.
Oh, so much hacking, and that minigame never changes.
Max, you don't have a clue.
It does redeem itself a little bit though with the addition of a hunting bow. Using the bow doesn't break stealth, and it lets you thin the herd before you go in for a fight. Overall, there's more of a focus on stealth now, and you can see missions designed with bits of cover strategically placed so that you can pick your way around the map unseen. And stealth kills avoid reinforcements from being called in.
I remember in the last game really enjoying all the stealth stuff, especially with the humans, but here it felt a little bit dated to me. Ever since Hitman Absolution, I just want a bit more out of stealth now. It's not bad, it's just not great. You're right though, the bow is a great addition, and you can also pick up the odd alien weapon. There's different ammo types for the bow and most guns. In fact, all the weapon customization is great. You'll switch up on the fly, and it becomes more important to do so on the harder difficulties. All the customization menus are quick and intuitive.
Oh, good menus, Bajo.
Good menus.
The guns all handle with a good weight too, with plenty of options. Plus, they look so shiny. It's a shame they didn't explore those alien weapons more. I mean, we only found 2 or 3 of them, and you can't keep them on you once they run out of juice.
I am glad they've gone for these bigger open areas though, except I think overgrown New York isn't quite as visually interesting as the actual New York in the last game. Actually, I struggled with the level design in general. I enjoyed the sections with the big striders, and my favorite area was all the aliens running around in the grass impersonating velociraptors, and that really embraced the ruined New York theme. But in the bigger areas, I found that I was getting a little bit lost, and there were also some ledges that I couldn't climb onto, and I wanted to get up top and plan my attack, but I just couldn't get there. There were even invisible walls, and it makes me feel like they only want you to go a specific certain number of ways in these areas, so it's almost an illusion of a sandbox. And I also found some of the objectives just a bit confusing.
Yeah, but I still prefer those semi-sandbox areas to the linear structure of 2 though. And getting lost doesn't bother me so much. I mean, I didn't mind exploring, but what got to me was that you're dragged around the levels by small objectives, which are essentially switches. I hate switches. And from a gamer's perspective, it just feels like a really lazy way to pull you through a level. I mean, is it too much to ask for better narrative-based objectives?
Yeah, there was one in particular which drove me crazy where you had to disable these 2 generators around a dam by flicking some switches, and then you just blew up the dam anyway.
You have multiple cell units moving on your position.
Why don't you just do that first?
Plus, once again, in so much of the game, you don't get to do any of the cool stuff. And this time, I really felt like I should have been allowed to. And on the odd occasion you do get to aim something or mash a button, it feels tacked on. The worst example is probably this flying mission. It's visually exciting, but you don't feel that involved at all. It's also confusing because the previous cutscene even had little aiming squares, but you couldn't do anything. I mean, if you're gonna give me little block-on squares, let me shoot at them.
Yeah, there's a few issues with this game, I think. It also doesn't feel different enough to 2. It feels more like an expansion, really, and maybe that comes down to the less than 2 years development time. But the biggest issue is the game's length. We finished it in 6.5 hours, and that's almost half what the last Crysis game was. And I thought I could bank on Crysis, holding the line in a time where most FPSs are 5-hour campaigns or 6. And I remember the moment clearly, Hex. I was playing a level that suddenly got very, very difficult, and I thought, no, not Crysis. And I could sense that the end was coming, and then bam, credits. Maximum disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, you probably could play this game a little bit slower and everyone's playtime will vary, but I didn't feel like we were rushing it much. Plus, you know, I can handle a short game if it's got something really epic, if it's a journey that really stays with you. But this ends up being a couple of average boss fights, some nice visuals and solid ideas, but you just don't get a chance to see it play out.
Yeah, and like with the suit customization, it was a really good idea and I could see lots of options there, but I barely unlocked 3 or 4 of them before the game was over. Okay. We are sounding a bit harsh here, and I think that may be partly because we're playing this on console, and we're used to playing this on PC, and Crysis is known for pushing those PC visuals, so it does feel like a little bit of a step back. It is still a very good looking game on console though, especially in the smaller enclosed areas and when the enemies get up close, they're nice and shiny. We did have a chance to play it on PC for the multiplayer beta though, and that was fantastic. For a start, you can stay connected online for more than 5 minutes, which was something that we could never really get to happen with 2. And fighting other super soldiers is so much fun. The sound of your armor crunching, the awesome ground pound, and hiding in plain sight with a shotgun loaded up and ready to go, it's better than ever.
You are now a hunter. Eliminate the cell operatives.
I especially liked the new Hunter mode, where Marines are slowly wiped out by other players using a bow in permanent stealth. It really plays with your fears, and you'll find yourself twitching and checking behind yourself every few seconds.
I also like just leaping about in these multiplayer maps and doing that slide. Good parkour system. Final thoughts, Hex?
Well, I think if you never played Crysis 2, then you will really enjoy this, but fans of this series, they might be left wanting, so I'm giving this maximum 7.
I'm giving it maximum 7.5.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? Sit down. It was Dyad from not that long ago, just last year in fact. It was a tunnel racing puzzle shooter that was all about momentum. You use combos to charge up a special meter and the complexity grows through all 26 levels. It also featured a unique music score thanks to David Kanaga, one of the creative forces behind this week's Proteus.
Next week, we explore the origin story behind Lara in the new Tomb Raider, which we learned is a reboot, not a prequel, which we learned this very episode, thanks to Goose.
Isn't my happy dance? It's a more restrained version.
Yeah, do you want to see my happy dance?
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
It's very restrained. Over on Spawn Point on ABC 3 this weekend, we soak up the beautiful European countryside whilst driving big rigs in Euro Truck Simulator 2.
And our new weekly wrap-up show featuring what we talk about in Good Game and Spawn Point is called Pocket Edition, and it's on at 8:20 p.m. on ABC2 on Saturday.
Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Keep on trucking. Bajo out.
Okay, that cannot be your sign-off. I just can't.
It's not bad. It's...
I mean, I prefer the one about the V-Sync. That was better than keep on trucking. Don't you spit that out. Don't you do it.
That's really gross. ABCT. Can't beat it.